Welcome back to the Snowpoint Cast. Today we're going to be taking a look at a deck that we've already actually taken a look at called Dialgachomp. So in the past year and a half, maybe 2 years, there's actually been a lot of advancements in the deck, and especially because there's been 2010 tournaments happening and real metas that decks can kind of unfold in and be truly tested in. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened. So before we do the profile, I just want to give a quick shout out to Noah Sakachin. He's one of my testing buddies who I've been working with this list on for a very long time, and we've gone in and out and changed like 10 cards around, honestly changing stuff all the time, and he's like a really great partner to bounce ideas off, so shout outs to him. And then also I want to give a shout out to Josh Fernando. So a couple of the counts in this list are actually just straight ripped from his Dialgachomp list, because there's a lot of parts of his list that I really enjoy, and I'll point them out when we get to them. But just shout out to those two guys because they did a lot in terms of advancing this deck in the last little while. Okay, so let's get right into it. So starting off with 2 Dialga. So 100 HP metal type, which is great because it lets you use special metal energy, which is a pretty big part of the deck. Deafen for a metal and a colorless does 10. Your opponent can't play any trainer cards or stadium cards from their hand during their next turn. So that's a great locking attack. So just being able to lock out rare candies and stadiums and a Pokemon search, Pokemon communication, luxury ball, all that. Is great for denying your opponent's setup, and sometimes you're able to hit that turn 1 with an energy gain. However, I think that especially with this list, I usually wouldn't recommend that. There are situations where I think that's the correct play. Like if you're staring down a Machop and you have a lone Dialga, then that's absolutely the play. But I think the majority of the time you want an expert belt on here, because when your deafens are doing 30, you can just keep deafening for real damage and then retain that trainer lock. So deafen, amazing attack, especially with an expert belt. Throw a special metal on there, and the deck's really running. It just is really solid. And then second strike for a metal 2 colorless does 50. If the defending Pokemon has 2 or more damage counters on already, this attack does 50 plus 20. So definitely a good cleanup attack if you only have 3 energy attached. Not so bad in some situations. They're also playing 2 Dialga G Level X. So this is kind of one of the advancements that has been made in Dialgachomp. Is 2/2 Dialga is pretty staple if you know what you're doing with the deck, because it is a Dialga deck and you want to stay tanky. So you want to have 2 Dialgas. One of them might go down. Usually one does go down. And then you hope to keep probably your special metals on the other one and have the second one not go down. If it does go down, you do have that option to errands and play a third one, and I've definitely done that in situations. But 2/2 is great for just finding it early, getting them out, and also being able to break the body lock that some decks have. So Dialga G Level X got 120 HP. Time Crystal helps break that lock. So each Pokemon, both yours and your opponent's, excluding Pokemon SP, can't use any Pokebodies. So that shuts off Spiritomb from Arceus, which is actually a really great card. Spiritomb is played in almost every Stage 2 setup deck just because it's really good, slows the game down for Stage 2s and lets them set up the game. But you just lock that out. So you say, hey, you got a great Pokebody. I'm going to find my level X, and now you don't have that anymore. But I'm still going to trainer lock you with Deafen. So you're still trainer locked, but I'm not going to worry about it. So that's actually really nice. And it can be really important to hopefully draw out of some trainer lock hands if you have this guy. And then remove loss is the attack. So remove loss is really great as well. So for metal 2 colorless, it does 80. Flip a coin until you get tails. For each heads, remove an energy attached to the defending Pokemon and put it in the loss zone. This is a crazy attack. Actually, at a tournament this year, I flipped 5 heads in a row to completely clear another Dialga of all its energy. I actually did that in a tournament this year. So kind of a crazy attack, and can totally swing games like that. But there are also some techs that you can play to kind of avoid the deadly part of this, which we're going to get into in just a sec. But yeah, just a really good cleanup attack. Honestly, once you get to the point when you're attacking with Remove Lost, your opponent is usually struggling, not only because you're discarding their energy, but you're hitting them for so much damage. If you have an expert belt, you're doing 100, and then if you've deafened once or twice before on some Pokemon, you're just going to be clearing them, just killing them with Remove Lost. So really deadly late game attack. That's usually your late game play versus a lot of decks. Okay, so you're also playing 2 Garchomp C, so obviously important to set up Garchomp. Garchomp's a big part of the deck, so 80 HP, colorless type, Claw Swipe for a double colorless does 30, so that can donk some stuff. Unown Q or a Magikarp, if you start a Garchomp and have a DC in your hand, so you can potentially just donk there, or if you start a Q and have an option to get something there. And then Earthquake, double color, or for 3 colorless energy does 50, and then it does 10 to each of your bench Pokemon. So being able to hit for 100 against colorless weak Pokemon is really nice because the level X has 110 HP. What a beautiful transition. So being able to hit it for 100 with Earthquake and then ping it with a Crobat for 10 makes it able to knock out a Garchomp level X, which can be super important sometimes depending on what your hand looks like. So Garchomp C Lv rather, 110 HP, free retreat, which is actually a really important part of the card. Having free retreat is great. Weak to itself, colorless ×2. Healing breath is the Poke Power. So this is the main reason that you're playing this card. I think that one of the things that has been kind of mistranslated over the years of Dialgachomp is that this guy is your main attacker and you're going to be using Dragon Rush. Dragon Rush, you absolutely can use it and it's an awesome attack, but it is not going to be your main attack at all. And I think that's one of the things that a couple lists that I've seen over the past little while have kind of got confused is this is not a prime attacker. You're not really a Garchomp deck, you're a Dialga deck, and then you can attack with Garchomp if the situation allows for it or is beneficial for you to attack with Garchomp. So Garchomp C Lv, Healing Breath. Once on your turn, when you put Garchomp C Lv from your hand to your active Garchomp C, you remove all damage counters from all of your Pokemon SP. So this is a broken ability with this deck because with Special Metals, Expert Belt, Snowpoint Temple, your Dialgas last a long time, often 3 hits, if not more. So being able to, take those hits, use a Warp Energy, it forces you to switch from your active, you have your Garchomp, promote it, level X, Healing Breath the Dialga, and then because of free retreat, you can just retreat back to the Dialga, which is really, really nice. Pros that play this deck know that they should, if they have a Bronzong or outs to a Bronzong, they should be using Bronzong to switch the Warp Energy back, and then you Poke turn the Garchomp, bench the Garchomp C, and then all of a sudden you're able to do that again next turn. And that's the great part of the deck is you're able to potentially loop healing for a lot, which is really, really deadly when you can loop Healing Breath, because Dialga G, again, just such an amazing attacker. So that's great. And then Dragon Rush is an awesome attack as well. So for 3 colorless, discard 2 energy attached to Garchomp C. Choose one of your opponent's Pokemon. This attack does 80 damage to that Pokemon. So great for taking out a Claydol or taking out one of your opponent's stage 1s if they have put some energy on that and you want to take that out before they can attack with it. Honestly, just a really versatile attack, but again, just to be noted, not the main attack of the deck, and it's not an attack you're going to be prioritizing. You want to be attaching to your Dialga if you have that option too, most of the time. Okay, so moving on. Also playing an Uxie line. So Uxie has got 70 HP, Psychic type, single retreat. Setup is the Poke Power. So when it's your turn, when you bench Uxie from your hand, you can draw cards until you have 7 cards in your hand. So great setup ability. No pun intended, that's the name of the power. But yeah, really great for just helping your board out and drawing you cards. Broken ability. And then also the attack is pretty good. So for 1 colorless, it does 20, and then you can put Uxie and all cards attached to the bottom of your deck in any order. Being able to hit Psychic can be important versus Machamp for sure. And then also having that Uxie to be able to potentially get through Gengar's fainting spell is also a nice part of Psychic Restore. Then you're also playing 1 Uxie X. So Uxie level X has got 90 HP, single retreat. So trade-off is the Poke Power. It's just another consistency-based power. So once you return free attack, you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck, choose one of them and put it into your hand, and then choose the other one and put it to the bottom of your deck. So just some really good late-game consistency, especially if you can keep Uxie X out for a number of turns. That trade-off can really turn into a massive hand for you that can get pretty deadly for sure. And then also Zen Blade's a great attack on Uxie. So for double colorless energy, it does 60, and then Uxie can't use Zen Blade during your next turn. So this can absolutely kill a Gardevoir if you have an Expert Belt attached. Gardevoir is plus 30 weak to Psychic, so you put an Expert Belt on there, DCE, and then you can smoke a Gardevoir for the knockout if that's something that you want to do for sure. So that's kind of nice. Also playing 1 Bronzong. So Bronzong is a tech card that kind of just lets you move around your energy. It's actually a really cool part of SP that like every SP deck plays. The Bronzong G, 90 HP, metal type. Galactic Switch. Once you're on your turn before you attack, you can move an energy card attached to one of your Pokemon SP to another one of your Pokemon, then put 2 damage counters on Bronzong. So just being able to move that around is really great. Like I was saying before, the moving the Warp Energy onto the Garchomp before you Poke turn it is really great. Another option that you have is, say I'm attacking with a Dialga, I can move an energy to a fresh Dialga and then Poke turn a Dialga if I want to heal it, and then bench or promote the other one, attach the Expert Belt that's probably on the previous Dialga, and then all of a sudden you're attacking again. So it can keep your attackers mobile as well. And just kind of really depending on what the board is, it lets you move your energy around. Just lets you be very versatile with what your options are. Bronzong's a great card. I guess you can use Psychic Pulse, so we'll talk about it. So for Metal Color, double colorless, it does 40, and then it does 10 damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. So not a great attack that you're going to be using, but I have had to use it in a pinch before. This will play 1 Crobat. So Crobat G, 80 HP, free retreat, which is nice. So Poke Power, Flash Bite. When you bench Crobat G from your hand, you can drop 1 damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon. So just a great card for getting over any big HP or any any numbers that you really want to hit, it lets you do that. And then Toxic Fang is actually an okay attack in some situations as well, because you do play a Psychic Energy. So Psychic Colorless, the defending Pokemon is now poisoned. Put 2 damage counters instead of 1 on the defending Pokemon between turns. So not bad against a Dialga or something tanky, maybe a Machamp, if that's something that you're kind of spooked about. And you're also playing one Toxicroak G. So this is mostly a tech against fire cards. You would think that it's a tech against Luxray, which it can absolutely be. You can use Toxicroak to take out a Luxray. But Luxray is not honestly super threatening. I mean, once you get a couple special metals on Dialga, they're not really hitting you for much damage. And they're doing 30 to their own board every time they attack. So it's really not that big of a deal. However, 2 things that are a really big deal are Blaziken FB level X and Entei Raikou Legend. So those are both fire type attackers that can swing for massive amounts to potentially one-shot Dialga G level X. The whole point of the deck is that you don't get one-shot and you heal off your damage, but if you do get one-shot, you have to answer back. Otherwise, they could potentially just sweep you at that point if you don't have an answer to their knockout of your Dialga. So Toxicroak G, 90 HP. Leap Away is the power. So Leap Away is actually really good. I'm going to talk about Leap Away for just a second here, because it's a great part of this deck that I don't know if a lot of people know about. So Leap Away, once on your turn before you attack, if Toxicroak G is your active Pokemon, you may flip a coin. If heads, return Toxicroak G and all cards attached to it to your hand. So something that you can do with Toxicroak G is this. Let's say I just attacked with a Garchomp level X. Okay, let's say I have an energy on there as well, and I want to attack with it again next turn. Let's say I have a win condition. If I attack with Dragon Rush again, okay? But I can't attack again because Dragon Rush says you can't use it 2 turns in a row. So what you can do is, since when you switch to the bench, all effects leave, so you can retreat for free. And then because you've gone to the bench, you can use Dragon Rush again. That effect is gone now because you're not in the active position. You can Leap Away, and then if you hit heads on the Leap Away, you can return the Toxicroak to your hand, promote Garchomp. If you have another double Colorless energy or an energy with Bronzong and then an energy in your hand, you can use Dragon Rush again. So that's kind of a really neat part of Toxicroak G. It lets you reset your Dragon Rushes. Or actually your Zen Blade too. I mean, it's a little trickier because Uxie doesn't have free retreat, but it's something that can absolutely happen with Uxie as well. So kind of a neat part of that ability there. And then Poison Revenge. So for Psychic Colorless, it does 20. If any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack during his or her last turn, this attack does 20 damage plus 40 more damage, and the defending Pokemon is now poisoned. So that hits for 130 with Poison. So that obviously kills a Luxray, which is kind of clutch. But also kills Blaziken FB level X. Even if they have an Expert Belt, you still... I actually don't know if they have an Expert Belt. You actually don't kill them because, and it's only after they attack. Because after a Blaziken attacks, they take, I think it's 50 more damage. It might be 40. It's actually 40 more damage. So being able to one shot a Blaziken, if they have an Expert Belt, you have to have an Expert Belt of your own, which is kind of a bummer. But honestly, trading that is not so bad. And then also great for one shotting an ERL. Entei Raikou Legend has a 140 HP. So if you have a Crobat ping for 1 and then you Poison Revenge for 130, that's a fresh knockout. I'm pretty sure it's 140 HP. If it's not, that's my bad. But yeah, great for being able to knock out tech attackers that some of your opponents might play for your Dialga. So it's kind of a tech for techs. Okay, moving on. We play one Unown Q, so this is mostly to put on our Uxie level X so that we can, retreat it for free and then use trade-off, but also can be used on Toxicroak, because, if you have 1 energy or there, you can retreat for free. Not amazing, and usually you're going to want to be leaping away as well. Also can be used on an Unown G. There's not a ton of stuff you want it on, sometimes Garchomp as well, but it's mostly so that if you have a Pokemon search card, like a Roseanne or a Pokemon collector, you can search for it, attach it to the active, and then retreat into a Deafen is what it's mostly for. And it just kind of keeps you mobile if you need to be mobile. Also, Hidden Power is a decent attack, so I'll just say how quick works for a sec. So it's got free retreat. If I have a Toxicroak G here, or else I'd say Toxicroak. Let's say Garchomp. I have a Garchomp I'm about to attack with a Dialga, but I don't have that energy to attach to the Dialga and also retreat. I can go Q on a Garchomp and then retreat for free. So Q, you can just discard all cards attached, and then Quick becomes a Pokemon tool. Hidden Power, also a decent attack. So for 1 Colorless, it does 20. This has actually happened in a game recently where I'm playing Andrew, and Andrew starts... Unown Q, and I start Machamp, but I miss an energy, and he hits me for a Hidden Power for 20 plus 30 for a fresh 50, putting me down to 80, which opens him up for a Garchomp play next turn. So actually kind of a really cool card there, kind of nice against Machamp. Hidden Power can be a decent attack, so keep that in mind for sure. And then you also play one Unown G. So Unown G's got 50 HP. Single retreat, guard is the power. So guard, once during your turn, you can essentially do the same thing as Unown Q. You can discard it and then it becomes a Pokemon tool. So let's say I have a Toxicroak. If I discard it and put this on it, I can't be affected by any effects of attack. So this is mostly the reason that I play this card is for two things. It's good against some things, but it's mostly for this. It's mostly for opposing Dialgas because it stops remove loss. So if you have a Dialga and then your opponent has a Dialga and you have an Unown G and they attack you first, you're not just, you know, up the creek without a paddle if they get like a heads or two and remove lost you down so that you can't remove lost them back. But what you can do is, unless they have an Unown G, obviously, is you can attach after and then potentially hit that remove loss. So it's kind of a really flippy matchup, to be honest, because you're pretty much praying for remove lost heads. But because that's just how the matchup is, Unown G is really, really nice. Another reason is the Machamp I was just talking about. So Machamp, take out, if your opponent's active as a basic Pokemon, that Pokemon is knocked out. So that's an effect of an attack, and it's not actually doing any damage. So when you have an Unown G attached, that stops your Dialgas from just being absolutely obliterated for one energy, and you really can't afford that. So mostly for those two. Also can be good against Gengar Stormfront. Shadow Room, being able to drop 3 counters or 6 if they have a Poke Power. Mostly you're going to be wanting to put that on Bronzong against Gengar because this is a pretty important card in a lot of matchups. Also could be good on a Uxie as well. But yeah, really important to lock that as well in Gengar. The reason that I'm not playing this because of Gengar, I'm playing it, you know, because of Machamp and other Dialga lists, is because I think Gengar is like a fine matchup, and I don't think you need an Unown G to win that one, but it definitely helps for sure. So nice to have that in there if you ever run into a Gengar. I did lose to Jay's Gengar in our gauntlet a little while ago with Dialgachomp, so maybe helps. So also we're going to be playing, oh, these are in the wrong order. We're going to be playing 4, getting to the trainer cards, we're playing 4 Poketurn. So Poketurn is just a broken card. Return one of your Pokemon SP and all cards attached to your hand. So just being able to return that Garchomp, or potentially reuse a Crobat or a Bronzong, or heal a Dialga like I was talking about before. There's so many uses for Poketurn that it's kind of hard to describe them all right now, but just being able to have that versatility of healing and switching and reusing powers is way too good, especially when you can search it with a Cyrus Conspiracy. It's just way too good of a card. Really, really solid card. So you're also playing 3 Power Spray. Speaking of being able to search with Cyrus Conspiracy, so Power Spray, you may play this card during your opponent's turn. When your opponent uses any Poke Power, prevent all effects of that Poke Power, and then you need at least 3 Pokemon SP in play to be able to use a Power Spray. So Power Spray, just a really great card, being able to stop your opponents from setting up, you know, prevent them from playing a Claydol or an Uxie early game, can be the difference between them setting up and not setting up, especially when you can deafen them afterwards and say, hey, I'm going to prevent your setup. I guess you were hoping to draw a candy this turn. That's really tough because I just Power Sprayed you Uxie, and then also deafen for 30. And then that's kind of the really deadly part about Power Spray, is it can be combined with a deafen and time crystal lock, and then that's just a lot of lock for your opponent to be able to deal with while you're hitting them for like 30. Okay, so also playing 3 Excerpt Belt. So I think this is one of the things that is pretty, I'm not gonna say staple, but it's like really, really good, and I wouldn't go lower than 3 now that I've tested with 3 Excerpt Belt. So Excerpt Belt, the Pokemon this card is attached to gets plus 20 HP, and your opponent's attacks and does 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So like I was saying, great with Deafen, also just great to use on any of your secondary attacks with Dialga. Remove Lost or Second Strike just buffs your damage by a lot, and keeps you alive as well. Having that 20 extra HP can be a big deal when you're trying to avoid knockouts for sure, but it's so important because you want to get those early big damage Deafens in as quick as you can. So Puka's old Dialgachomp list played only 1 Extra Belt, which actually didn't really love at all, because it's such a good card in the deck, and you want it on every Dialga. There's also lots of opportunities where I want to put it on an Uxie or a Toxicroak G, and I've been in those positions before. If you have it on a Toxicroak G, you actually just one-shot an Entei Raikou Legend. It's kind of important to be careful about that, because then if your opponent has an Uxie level Uxie or an Uxie level X, they can just one-shot you right back for 2 prizes. But you know, if your opponent doesn't have an answer, an Expert Belt on a Toxicroak can be really, really solid as well. So Expert Belt as a 3 of, I think, is really, really good right now, and I definitely wouldn't go lower than that. So also playing 2 SP Radar. So SP Radar is just another searchable Team Galactic's invention. So choose a card from your hand, put it on top of your deck, search your deck for a Pokemon SP, show it to your opponent, and put it in your hand. So finds all these guys and these guys. So just great Pokemon search that is searchable by a supporter if you need to hit something on the same turn as you use a Cyrus. You're also playing 2 Versus Seeker. So this is another one of the advancements that's kind of happened over the past couple years. I just think that Versus Seeker is such an underutilized card in this format, and a lot of decks should be playing at least one of. I think this deck really benefits from playing two of. You play so many one of supporters that are just useful in niche situations, but in those situations they're like extremely useful. So having access to the supporter cards that you've already played, when you play a card that searches supporters and ditches them, it's so good, and it keeps your late game really versatile, especially like Bertha's Warmth, and then Versus Seeker for second Berthas and Versus Seeker for third Berthas. Just pretty much, it doesn't auto win you, but it gives you a really good time against Gardevoir for the most part. They can definitely win, and I think some variants even have a positive matchup against Dialga for sure. But versus some variants, they just can't handle multiple Berthas. So being able to get those back again is really nice. You're also playing one Team Galactic's Invention Energy Gain. So Energy Gain, it can only be attached to SP Pokemon. If it is attached to an SP Pokemon, that Pokemon pays one colorless less to attack. So mostly useful on Toxicroak and Garchomp, because Garchomp's having that colorless. Again, you can use it on a Dialga, and there are situations that you're going to want to do that, but they are a little bit rare that you want to be putting an Energy Gun on a Dialga, because Extra Belt is just so much better. So being able to put it on a Garchomp lets you attack for DCE, just a single DCE attached, lets you use Dragon Rush, which can be really clutch. And then also it lets you use Poison Revenge for only one Psychic, which can be really good as well. If you have a card or a combo in your hand that lets you respond with Toxicroak, but you don't have the energy on your board with a Galactic Switch or whatever, you can just find an Energy Gain, and then all of a sudden you're attacking with the Pokemon you want to attack with. Just playing one Warp Point. So Warp Point, your opponent switches one of his or her defending Pokemon with his or her active Pokemon, and then you do the same. So being able to switch into Garchomp is really nice. Also, this is usually a late game card that I'm super conservative with this card. Unless I like know that I'm really benefiting from it or like starting to lock with it, I won't play it early game. Because it's so good late game. You get to a point where, you Garchomp snipe the stuff that you're up on your opponent's bench that you want, and then you also are attacking with Dialga. And a lot of the times what your opponent's going to do is they'll chuck something really big in the active, like a big level X or something, that they say, hey, you won't be able to one-shot this, but you can go ahead and attack it if you want, because you won't be able to win the game with it if you're down to like one prize. But that's why Warp Point is really clutch, especially late game if you've been trading off a lot. You should have seen this probably. If you missed it, tough luck. But being able to Warp Point and say, hey, I'm not going to deal with that thing in your active, I'm actually just going to remove something on your bench for 100 and just kill it anyway, is a really great option to have, and that's why you play one Warp Point. You're also playing one Pokemon Communication, so choose one Pokemon from your hand and put it on top of show it to your opponent, put it on top of your deck, and then search your deck for a Pokemon and put it in your hand. So you play a lot of Pokemon. Was it 8, 11, 14, 16 Pokemon? Not a ton, but enough that a Pokemon Communication is warranted. And it just lets you take any Pokemon, put it back, and then get another Pokemon out of your deck. So great, just good Pokemon search there for sure. You're also playing 2 Snowpoint Temple. So this is a Josh Fernando count that I was testing against, and then I ended up including. So I was originally on 1 Snowpoint Temple and 4 Expert Belt, because I just thought, hitting a turn 1 Expert Belt is such a big deal. But I think that Snowpoint Temple and Expert Belt are actually a lot better. It really helps your numbers. So let's say, for example, if you have an Expert Belt on a Dialga G level X, that's 140 HP, plus a Snowpoint Temple is 180. And then if you put a special metal on, that puts you 1 damage away from being one shot by a Blaziken FB level X. So that's actually a really big deal in that matchup. And then if you have more special metals, it can potentially put you out of a range of an ERL one shot, unless they have, Crobat, and in that case you might be able to answer with a power spray kind of thing. But being able to hit really big tanky Dialgas, I disagreed with this count, but I actually really like it after testing a little bit more with it. It just keeps your Pokemon alive more. Each Pokemon that isn't an evolved Pokemon, both yours and your opponents get plus 20 HP, so that's all your Pokemon, because you don't play evolved Pokemon. Level X's do not count as evolutions, so just being able to get that more HP is good. I will say something to be careful about with this card is, especially if you're up against Blaziken FB level X, or a deck that plays Blaziken FB level X, they get a benefit from this as well. So they get plus 20 HP, and that puts your Toxicroak out of range of a one-shot unless you have an Expert Belt. So keep that in mind. Sometimes it's still the correct play for sure if it prevents you from being knocked out. But again, it is really kind of dependent, and it can prevent them from being knocked out as well. So something to keep in mind there for sure. Okay, so getting into the supporter cards, we're going to be playing 4 Cyrus Conspiracy, just a really good card in the deck. Cyrus Conspiracy, search your deck for a supporter card, a basic energy card, and a trainer card that has Team Galactic's Invention in its name. Show it to your opponent and put it in your hand. So being able to search for 3 cards, one of them a supporter, one of them an energy, and a Team Galactic's trainer is just so good. It gets you Pokemon search, it gets you healing, it gets you potential lockouts, and then it also keeps you consistent, right? Because it's drawing you other supporter cards. So just an amazing card, super staple in like any SP list. It's just really, really good. Okay, so there is a ton of one-up supporters in this list, and I think that some people might say, oh, that's way too many one-ups, but when you can search any card, any supporter card with a Cyrus, it's not that crazy, because especially when you have access with Versus Seeker as well, you're just able to use them kind of whenever you want after they're in the discard. So starting off with Pokemon Collector is a great card. Search your deck for 3 basic Pokemon, show them to your opponent, and put it in your hand. So great for setting up. If you have this on turn 1, often you're going to be, it depends what your board is, but you're often want to be getting a Garchomp, a Dialga, and something else. Sometimes an Uxie, sometimes something else, depending on what your board is. But just great for setting up. Lets you find a lot of Pokemon. This is a multi-Pokemon deck, so you need to have a Garchomp and a Dialga set up if you're trying to implement the strategy that this deck is trying to set up. So it just helps you set that up a lot better. And you're also playing one Roseanne's Research. So search your deck for up to 2 in any combination of basic Pokemon and basic energy cards. So great to be able to search energy cards, basic energy. You play 4, so you only play 1 more, 4 Cyrus Conspiracy and a Roseanne's. So just to be able to search that out, and it's just another card that lets you get basic Pokemon as well. So something that's really nice with Roseanne's Research is if you just need to draw cards, you can go Roseanne's for a guaranteed metal attach on a Dialga turn 1, and then find an Uxie, and then just set up with Uxie and potentially draw into a better hand before your opponent has the opportunity to use Power Spray or lock your powers with a Gardevoir or something. You're also playing 1 PONT, or Professor Oak's New Theory. Professor Oak's New Theory, shuffle your hand to your deck, draw 6 cards. So just a solid shuffle, draw 6. Sometimes you need to hit a really big combo to potentially stay in the game, and this card kind of just lets you do that. You're also playing 1 Looker's Investigation. So this is an interesting hand disruption card that I think is staple in Dialgachomp. I don't think you can play this deck without this card. I think this card is way too good to be playing without. Just because you need to have an option to disrupt your opponent's hand. If you don't have an option to disrupt your opponent's hand, they can get to a board where, let's say they take a lead on prizes, and then they just have an answer to every answer that you have. When you start, in the SP mirror, that's what it comes down to eventually. So you have to start answering threats that your opponent puts active, and Looker's Investigation kind of prevents big Cyrus hands. So Cyrus Conspiracy, obviously an amazing card, but it lets them build their hand, right? Because they can find a Poketurn, get a Cyrus, get an energy, attach energy, and then do something else next turn. Cyrus again, get a Power Spray, and now they have a Poketurn and a Power Spray in their hand, which can be a little bit too scary for a lot of decks to deal with. So just being able to go Cyrus, I'm going to look for a Lookers, and then Lookers you next turn, and then hand disrupt you, go back to 5, is really, really solid. And there are some decks that you really need to use Lookers against in certain situations. And that's why 2 Visa Sticker is also really nice, because it lets you do that potentially more than once if that's something that you need to do in a game. Okay, so you're also playing 1 Bebe's Search. So Bebe's, choose a card from your hand, put it on top of your deck, and then search your deck for a Pokemon card and put it in your hand. So the reason that this is good is it lets you find your level X's, your quote-unquote evolution Pokemon. It's not an evolution Pokemon, but it's not a basic Pokemon that you can find with Roseanne or Collector. So being able to find that with a Cyrus, if you need to search for a Dialga G Lv or a Garchomp C Lv next turn, is really, really clutch. Also playing 1 Interviewer's Questions. So this is a card that I totally yoinked from Josh Fernando. The Roseanne's Research as well, actually, as a one-of, is I saw it on Josh's list, and I was like, oh, that's really neat. I like that a lot. But the Interviewer's Questions is another one of those cards. So look at the top 8 cards of your deck. Choose as many energy cards as you like, and then put those cards in your hand. So this is a great card because a lot of the energy that you play in this deck are special energy. You're playing 4 special metal, you're playing 3 double colorless energy, you're playing 2 warp point. And while Cyrus Conspiracy being able to search basic energy is nice, Interviewer's Questions being able to potentially hit the DCE for a clutch Dragon Rush or remove Lost, or a special metal to live on Dialga is also really, really good. And I think being able to use that multiple times, especially when you're late in the game, and let's say you have a hand, you haven't played many DCEs, but one is a win condition, you can find it with a Cyrus, and then especially when you have not very many cards in deck, hit that as almost a guaranteed. It's not always guaranteed. Is definitely a really good chance of hitting the card that you need. There's a big one, Bertha's Warmth. So this is another one of the developments that's kind of happened over the past 2 years. Is Bertha's Warmth is just a staple. It's so good. So Bertha's Warmth, remove 5 counters from one of your Pokemon SP, 5 damage counters. So this is mostly a Gardevoir tech. If Gardevoir hits a Dialga for, let's say, I don't have any special metals, they hit me for 40, you just Bertha's Warmth, and then that damage is gone. And then with a Versus Seeker, being able to reuse that multiple times can be really, really deadly for your opponent if they're not one-shotting you. And yeah, it's just one of those outs that if you don't have access to Poke Powers, whether because your opponent's playing a Mesprit or they're locking you with Gardevoir, it lets you still heal and not just have your Dialga go down next turn if that's what they're setting up. So let's play one Aaron's collection. So Aaron's collection, search your deck or discard pile for up to 2 in any combination of Pokemon SP and basic energy cards, show them to your opponent and put them in your hand. So with this card, I actually think that you don't need stuff like Premier Ball or anything like that, because 1 Aaron's and 2 VS Seeker lets you take back a 4th Dialga line if that's what you really want. Lets you attack with 2, they both go down. Aaron's bring a 1/1 back and then attack with it, and then you can potentially do it again if that's something that you really need to do. It's going to be rare, but having that Pokemon recovery, just to be able to recover your Garchomps as well, is just really, really nice. Okay, so getting into the energy cards, we're going to be playing 4 Spec Metal. So Special Metal Energy, busted card. If it's on a Metal Pokemon, that Pokemon takes 10 less damage from attacks. So if you stack those on a Dialga, they stack. So if you have 3 and you have an Expert Belt and a Snowpoint Temple, essentially you're rocking 200 HP. Your opponent needs to do 200 damage if they're looking to one-shot you, which is really, really deadly. And it helps keep your Dialgas alive, which is the point of the deck. So really, really super solid card with Dialga. You're also playing 3 double Colorless Energy. So this is kind of a shocking count for some people, and honestly, because this is a Josh Fernando count, and when Josh told me about 3 DCE initially, I was super against it. I was like, that's stupid. It's really important for remove lost. Also, you want to be able to attack with Garchomp C whenever you want, right? But then after testing with 3, I found that 3, especially with interviewers' questions, is like really, really fine. It's actually not that big a deal to miss out on the 4th double Colorless Energy. And like I was saying before, you're a Dialga deck, not a Garchomp deck, so it's not as important to just be hitting Dragon Rushes every turn. You're not going to be able to keep up with a Luxchomp deck that does that, because you only play 1 energy gain. And even if you played more, you still wouldn't be able to keep up, because they play 4 and 4 double Colorless Energy. So you kind of just take a hit there, but it doesn't really matter, because you don't really care if a Luxray is hitting into your like Dialga or a Garchomp's hitting into your like Dialga. So yeah, being able to, they're great and they're super useful for Dragon Rush and Remove Lost, but I think 3 is a really fine count in the deck. You're also playing 3 basic metal energy cards. So obviously, being able to search energy cards with Roseanne and Cyrus Conspiracy, you want to get an attach off on turn 1. This is one of the cards that I think maybe could be cut. I mean, if you wanted to go down to 2 metal, I think that would be fine. The reason that I really like 3 metal is because it gives you 1 less out than the supporters that you have that search it. So, you're playing 4 Cyrus Conspiracy and Roseanne and a Psychic Energy as well. So only one of those is going to miss. And you also play VS Seekers. So, I mean, I feel like not getting the energy part off of a lot of your Cyruses, let's say you are only playing 2 and a Psychic, every one of your Cyrus is guaranteed to miss an energy drop, and energy is just so important in this deck that I don't love doing that, and I just like hitting my attaches, honestly. So that's kind of why I'm playing a little bit of the heavier line, but I think that's one of the cards that you can cut. Also, you might be able to cut guard if you're thinking about cutting cards. This is kind of a risky meta call, and the reason that I play guard is because it's really strong against Machamp and other Dialga decks, which are pretty much the only threats to Dialga in the format. Some Guardy lists as well, like GGAMU. Yeah, if you wanted to, you could maybe cut these cards. I don't love those cuts, but especially, I don't know, I feel like you could probably go down to 1 metal and still probably be fine, but I just like being able to attach turn 1. You're also playing 2 Warp Energy. So Warp Energy, when you attach to your active Pokemon, you switch with one of your bench Pokemon. So that's a great combo card. You just go attach to Dialga, switch to Garchomp, Healing Breath, Free Retreat, attack with Dialga again. And like I was saying, the combo that you can do with this is you want to attach it to a Dialga, switch to the bench, use this guy, Galactic switch it to a Garchomp, and then use Poke Turn on the Garchomp. Then all goes back to your hand. You bench the Garchomp C, and then you have the Garchomp X in your hand and the Warp Energy in your hand to be able to do it again next turn. So really cool combo there, and that's kind of the combo of the deck. Really, really powerful. And you're also playing 1 Psychic Energy just so you have that out to be able to use Poison Revenge if that's what you want. Actually can use Toxic Fang as well, and in some situations it's definitely good, but mostly there for Poison Revenge. Okay, well this is the new and updated Dialgachomp list after about a 1.5 to 2 years or so of tournament results and testing and changing the list a bunch. So yeah, if you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave in the comments below and I'll do my best to get to them. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.